Hey everyone, and in today's video we're going to work on switching weapons, just like you see right here. We're also going to work on equipping weapons, and as you can see we're going to have this cool little, I guess you can call it, outline of the weapons to show which one you currently have equipped, or equipped is not a word. And then we're also going to add the scroll wheel so you can scroll through whichever weapon you would like. And yeah, that's everything we're doing today, and let's get straight into it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to head straight into our hotbar slot. So I don't know if you remember from last time, but we had this item details here. We had the hotbar connected and we're checking if it's the hotbar. Because in the hotbar, we're actually in the hotbar right now. In the hotbar slot for this interface, we have it selected to true for is this the hotbar. So if we drag a hotbar onto another hotbar slot, we're going to output true and currently do nothing. However, we're going to start doing the functionality now. So it's going to be quite similar to this, pretty much, but we're going to do it for the hotbar. So we're going to first of all cast to third person character, like this. We're then going to get the player character, simply like that. So that's just the basic casting to third person character, getting a reference to it. So once we do that, we are going to actually go into the third person character, and we're going to create a new function. This function we're going to call swap hotbar item. So it's going to have 4 inputs. So the first one's going to be from index. So this is going to be the index of the hotbar that we're dragging onto the other hotbar. That makes sense. So it's going to be the dragging hotbar. We're going to have the to index, which essentially is going to be the hotbar that we're dragging it onto. So we're dragging it from one hotbar slot to the next hotbar slot. So this one's going to be the next hotbar slot. And then we're going to have the new details. So item details. And essentially this will be the details of the new item that we're replacing the old one with. And then this will be the current details, which essentially will be the old details that we're going to be replacing it with. That makes sense. This honestly is probably the most confusing thing ever. So please bear with me. I'm still confused by it myself. It was stressful to make, but you know, well, not stressful to make. It was stressful to name things to actually make sense, because I kept changing what they were called, and yeah, I'm going to try my best to explain it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a set array element. So because it's the hotbar, we're not actually removing anything or adding anything, since we already have all 3 slots here. We're just replacing each of these indexes. So we're going to get the hotbar, obviously, as the reference. And the first thing we'll do is we're going to replace the to index. So we can just grab the variable to index as this to index and this to index. The same thing, but this is just a bit cleaner to do. And then for the to index, so that's the one we're dragging it to, we're going to use the current details. So that's just the opposite of the to. So the new details is the same as the to, and index, they're the same. Not the same, but obviously there's the index for the that details, and the current is the same for the from. So we're just switching them around. So we can grab the hotbar. We can do set array element like this, and then just do the opposite. So the from index, which obviously is just this. And we'll grab the, what do you call it? New details. So we're just doing a big switcheroo of the items. Then we're going to grab the hotbar and we're going to get a copy. Get a copy, and we'll do a to index. So just copy and paste this to index here. So we're getting a reference to this exact index of the hotbar, because now what we want to do is set members. And we need to just remember to actually update the hotbar number, so it will make sense, because if we don't update this hotbar number, then it will still think it's in a different slot than it is. So we're going to replace this with the to index, so it thinks it's now in the next index, whichever we drag it to. And then we do the same thing, just duplicate this. But instead of using the to index, we're going to use the from index, just so it doesn't think it's still in a different index where it's just not. So from index here again, And I believe that should be good. So then all we'll do is just we'll return, and we'll just return we'll call it item details. Simply like that. So this is really confusing. We're just basically doing a massive switcheroo and just remembering to update the indexes so it still knows where it is, because we have to just tell it where it is in the world pretty much. Yeah, a little bit confusing, but I'm sure it does make sense because we're just switching these two and changing these. It's not too difficult, but my naming conventions probably made it a bit more difficult, to be honest. But I didn't know. So yeah, my bad. Anyways, now we'll actually just grab this function and we'll just call it here. Now we need to set these values. So the to index is which we're dragging it onto. So since this is on the drag, this is going to be the hotbar slot that we're dragging other hotbar slot onto. So that will just be the hotbar number. Then let's grab these item details. Let's do a break. And this is going to be the hotbar that we're dragging onto this. That makes sense. So that'll be the hotbar num. That'll be from the one we're currently dragging, because that is directly from the payload. And then the same with the item details. So the new ones will be the item details, and the other ones will just be this item details here, like that. And simply we just set these item details to whatever this is, because this is the new item, if that makes sense. We're just changing these item details around pretty much. It's not really, I don't really have a way to explain it because we're just updating the item details. And then from the third person character, we'll refresh the inventory. And we'll do this update hotbar as well. And obviously we kind of can't just plug it in directly here, because this third person reference and this third person reference is completely different, because if we go to the true, this one actually isn't valid, so we won't get a validation. So we can just copy and paste this update hotbar and plug it into this third person reference here. And then we can drag it into the return down like that. And yeah, we should be able to swap items around now. So yeah, you won't be able to notice if we drag it onto each other because they're the exact same item. But oh no, that's not good. So apparently we can't drag it on here. I'm not sure why. But yeah, it's not going to be one of my videos without something going horribly wrong. So let's figure out exactly what has gone wrong. Alright, let's do it. Oh no, we can duplicate items. That is not a good sign. I'm going to figure this out, don't worry. Alright, so essentially what the issue is this is completely wrong. And I had a feeling it was wrong, but I just thought what we had to do. We're actually going to drag this first struct out into the item details, as that is actually the reference we're going to want to put in inside of the hotbar slot to update it. Yeah, otherwise it won't be able to keep track of where it is in the world, in its life. It won't be able to track where it is in the index, pretty much in the array. So now we've done that, we can now pick up two items and we can infinitely swap it through here, I believe. No, we can't. Okay, so I managed to fix it, guys, and here's how I did it. So in the third person character, the swap hotbar item, so there is actually a difference between getting a reference and getting a copy. So oops, I just switched it to get a reference here. So I just went off to get a reference instead of get a copy, and then it started working. Please someone let me know in the comments what the difference is between a ref and a copy. Still no idea, but it works, so that's really what matters. But yeah, I just switched it to a reference for both of these instead of the copy. And now it works perfectly fine, so we can drag it wherever we want without any troubles whatsoever. We can switch them. Yeah, it now works perfectly fine. So yeah, that is swapping items done. So let's start working on actually equipping the items now. So let's go about doing that. So I'm going to keep things simple, and I'm not actually going to create any input events. So in the third person character, I'm going to go to the event graph, and I'm just going to simply grab the one key like this. This is obviously just for demonstration only. Really, you should be creating input keys for this. So you could have like slot 1, slot 2, slot 3 as 1, 2, and 3. But I'm trying to do it off of these keys here. This is for testing only, really. You shouldn't really be using it in an actual game. But I am not using it in an actual game, just using it for this test purposes only. Essentially, we're going to grab these 3 keys. We're then going to grab a new variable called a current hotbar slot. And this is going to be an integer. And you're going to keep track of which slot you have equipped currently. So if it's 1, it's going to be 0, because that's the first slot. If it's 2, it's going to be 1, because that's the second slot. And if it's 3, it's, believe it or not, going to be 2, because it's the third slot. So now we actually can easily identify which slot we're currently equipped. And yeah, so now we know which array we mean when we're targeting it. So we'll now make a new event. This will be called update hotbar slot. Much like the event inside of the hotbar widget, it's going to do a similar thing. So essentially what this is going to do is we're going to grab the main reference here. And so if we're talking about the, okay, how do we do this? So we'll delete that. If the inventory is open, we'll grab a branch. So if the inventory is open, we're going to target the inventory ref here. Yeah, we have the inventory ref. And we'll grab the hotbar from here, because that is what we're going to update. And in fact, nah, it'll be fine. So we're going to update this inventory hotbar here. So you can simply call the update hotbar like that. But we're still going to grab the main update hotbar. Sorry, hotbar, and then update it like that. Update hotbar. We're still going to update it here as well. But if it's false, then we're not going to update the inventory. We're just going to update the main. Like that. And I believe, actually, no, we did that completely wrong. Okay, we're not going to worry about this function for now. We're going to delete that. We're not going to worry about it for now. Yeah. So what this function will actually do is it will update the outline of the hotbar, which we'll get around to now. So we're going to head into the hotbar slot, and we are going to, and sorry, not the hotbar slot. We're in fact going to go into the hotbar. So we need to open that. WB hotbar, and in the graph, we're going to make some outlines now. So these are simply just going to be images. So we'll grab an image, add it to the canvas panel, and we'll put it above the horizontal block so it sits above it. Oh, sorry, no, so it sits behind it, even. And then I already have my measurements done. You can probably want to mess around with it a little bit, just so it looks good for you. But for me, if you've got the same size as mine, for the size I do 140 by 140, as it's slightly bigger than what the slots are, because the slots, I don't remember the size of the slots, but I think that's 125 by 125. So these are 140 by 140. They're slightly bigger. But we'll make the alignment minus, in fact, we'll first anchor it to the left-hand side like that. 0 out the Y. Then make the alignment minus 0.08. Then a 0.5 here. And then we're going to tint it to be grey. Just like that. And we'll rename this to be hotbar outline slot 1. Like that, and keep it as a variable. Then we can duplicate this and we can call this hotbar outline slot number 2. And for number 2, I'm going to put it as 0.5 there and 0 out these two. And we're just going to center it just so it goes into the center. 0 that out, and as you can see, it nicely fits around there. And then one more. This will be number 3. So for this one, we're going to anchor it to the right hand side, and we're going to set it to, didn't mean to do that. So we're going to 0 out its position, set it to an alignment of 1.08 by 0.5, like that. Because if you're wondering where I got my values from, it's from my other screen, but I did do the maths earlier, and so I worked out this first one, which, as you can see, the alignment, negative 0.08, 0.5, because 0.5 is always the center. And then this one's really easy because this is in the center, so you can just easily center it like 0.5, 0.5, because I put it in the center. And then for the right one, it's obviously got a padding of 0.8 pretty much to the other side, and then you got to move it over 1. That might make no sense, but you just pretty much got to figure it out yourself if you're not using the same measurements as I am. But if you are, then just copy. Yeah. So now we have these 3 slots. What we can do now is we can go in here and we can create a new function, and we'll call this update hotbar slot, like this. So we're going to grab a reference to the player ref, and we're going to get the current hotbar slot. Just remember, in the 1, 2, and 3, we set the current hotbar slot to 0, 1, and 2. So we're now going to check if it's equal to 0. If it is, then we are on about the first slot. So we'll just grab a hotbar slot 1, set visibility to visible, like this, and then hotbar slot 2, set visibility to invisible, hidden in our case, and number 3 will be slot 3, and that'll also be hidden as well. Just connect that equal to 0 up as well, and then duplicate it. We're then going to check if it's equal to 1, and in fact I'm actually going to show you something different, because we can instead just do a switch, because that is the same thing that we were doing, and we can just add the 1, 2, and 3, delete the default pin like that, and drag off from 0 and then 1, make the first one hidden and the second one visible, like this. It's pretty self-explanatory why this works. We're just pretty much checking which hotbar slot we have equipped and then hiding the rest and staying the other one visible. I have realized for you guys, if you guys are doing like a lot of hotbar slots, this will be a lot of manual work. I believe you could be able to put it in a for each loop, I believe. If you want to put it in a for each loop, DM me and I'll see if I can have time to do the for each loop for you. If you're struggling with it, if you really need it, if you've got like more than like 7 slots, then you might need it, you know. But it's much easier to just do it manually like that, because the for each loop won't actually have any, it won't be better on performance or anything, because it's still looping through the same process that it's doing here. But yeah, just put it out there that you can probably do it. I'm not sure if it's even possible. I'm sure it is. I haven't thought about it too much, if you can tell. But now if we just call this update hotbar slot on the begin play, or the construct in this widget's case, on the construct we're calling this update hotbar slot. Then in the third person character, if the inventory is open, we'll grab a reference to the inventory and do an hotbar reference here as well. And then we can do a update hotbar slot, like that, and do the same for the main. Update hotbar even, and then update hotbar slot like that, and then drag it here as well. So if you're wondering why we don't add it to do with the inventory here, it's because we don't have to do it for the inventory, because when we close the inventory, nothing is happening anyways, and we don't even have a reference to the inventory when we close it. But when we actually open it back up, it completely reruns this construct code where it will update the hotbar slot anyways. So I'll demonstrate that working to you guys in just a second, because before we do that, we need to actually put the function in here. So update hotbar slot and just duplicate it for all 3 of these. So when we now click play, when we pick up an item, as you can see, we have a nice little identifier to tell us which slot we're currently in. So now what we're going to do for our final step, we're going to get the scroll wheel to scroll through each of these weapons, which is not too difficult to do at all. So what we'll do is we'll grab the mouse wheel up, I believe it's called. Yep, the mouse wheel up. So what we want the mouse wheel up to do, we want up to be back, like scroll backwards through your inventory, and down to be forwards. You can switch the way, you can switch it around if you want, but I think the most intuitive to me is up will go back, down will go forwards. So we're going to check what the current hotbar slot is. And as long as it's not equal to 2, because when it's equal to 2, that's the end of the hotbar. So actually no, this is for up, so we're actually going to check if it's not equal to 0, because that will be the start of the hotbar, and we're going backwards. So if it's at the start, then instead of, so if it's not equal to 0, so okay, so if it's not equal to 0, we're going to grab the current hotbar slot, and we're just going to decrement it. Because if it's equal to 0, then we obviously don't want to go to -1. But if it's not equal to 0, then we just want to go to, so if say it's 2, we'll go to 1, and then if it's 1, we'll go to 0. But if it's 0, then we're just going to set the current hotbar slot to be 2. Because that's the end. So that's our last hotbar. That makes sense. So 2 is our last hotbar slot, so when we scroll back, it's going to go all the way to the end. Or you can make it so you can't scroll at all, if that's what you want to do. But I want it to loop back to the end. Then you'll just do exactly what you do here. So we'll just update the hotbar slot for both of these. And that is it. And then for the mouse wheel down, what we can do is this exact thing. So just duplicate it. Then instead of equaling to, not equaling to 0, not equal to 2, because we're going to scroll up. We don't want it to go past 2 because that's our last index. So if you have 5 slots, then you'll not want to go past 4, for example, because obviously it's an index, so it's the number -1 because it starts from 0. And then we're going to set it to 0 here. And instead of decrementing it, we're going to increment it. And yeah, that should work perfectly now. So when we scroll up, as you can see, it goes down, and when we scroll down, it goes up the list. Exactly like that. So yeah, that's everything we'll do today. We sort of start into the equip system. We'll next video do the actual equip system and use system for it. And yeah, then I believe after that we will actually be done. Actually, no, we still need the drop system as well. But yeah, that's everything for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.